Pratasmarami hridi samsfuradaatmatattvam Satchit sukham paramaham sagatim turiyam Yat swapna jagara sushuptim avaiti nityam Tad brahma nishkalamaham nacha bhuta sangaha Tapo bhikshira papanam Shantanam vitaraginam Mumukshunam apekshoyam Atma bodho vidhiyate bodhonya sadhane bhyohi sakshan mokshaika sadhanam pakasya vahni vajnanam vina moksho na siddhyati. Hari Om. Welcome back to Gems of Bhagavad Gita. We'll continue where we left off yesterday. On the 13th chapter. We finished the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and we are going to start with the gems from chapter number 14. Chapter number 14. Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, the distinction between the three yogas. We have been discussing about Prakriti and Purusha in the last two classes. Prakriti, nature. Purusha, spirit. Prakriti, matter, material equipments, body, mind, intellect. Purusha, the Atman, the self in you. Every being is a combination of spirit and matter. It's a combination of electricity and bulb. When electricity meets bulb, there is an expression of light. Similarly, when the Atman, the self, the spirit, meets the material equipments, a being is created and there is an expression of life. We are a combination of the two. The two interacting create you and me. The problem is we know the Prakriti, we know not the Purusha. We are only aware of the Prakriti, but we know not the Purusha in us. We know not the self in us. To know thyself is our purpose. Currently, we're completely entangled. Not only do we only know the Prakriti, we are completely entangled in it. We're completely attached to it. The Prakriti is perishable. The Prakriti is changing. At no point does the Prakriti remain the same. The Prakriti is constantly changing. Your Prakriti from 10 years ago is not the same as your Prakriti today. Your vasanas from 10 years ago is not your vasanas from today. And yet we think it's the same individual. We don't believe that the individual has changed. So what is that aspect of the individual that has not changed? Everything about your Prakriti is constantly subject to change. There is nothing fixed about your Prakriti. And yet you believe that you are the same person. When I was 30 years old, when I was 20 years old, you associate that memory of the past with the same person. So what is the aspect of the person, the unchanging aspect of the person? That is what we are after. We don't even think about it. We just assume, yes, it's the same person. But what is that unchanging aspect that was there 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that was there in the beginning, since the beginning of your life, and that is with you today, that unchanging part of you? What is that? Because your Prakriti and everything about your Prakriti is subject to change and has changed. Your body has changed. Your mind has changed. Your intellect has changed. But what is that part of you, that imperishable, that unchanging aspect of you? Within this changing aspect, within this perishable aspect, there is something. You experience it yourself. This is not some high funda philosophy. I'm only trying to zoom into your own experience in life, you yourself believe there is an unchanging, unbroken link between a completely different personality of 20 years ago. Think about it. You yourself, completely different personality, very different person. You look back at your childhood and you laugh. Hmm. But you believe there is a link. What is that link? Who is that I? I was young. I was innocent. I was immature. I was a very active child. I. I am mature. I am an old person. I am. What is the I that was and now is? It's the same I. It's the same I. Who is that I? What is that I? See, the point you might be thinking, what? I didn't even think about this question. Exactly. We never think about this. We never think about this. Who is the I? Who are you? Are you this nose? Are you this hair? Are you these organs? Are you your kidney? Tomorrow, right now, there may be two. Tomorrow, there might be only one. Does that mean you will stop existing or you will become half? Huh? If I take out one of your kidneys, does that mean you will become half? So clearly, you are not your kidney. You are not your kidney. You're not your ears. You're not this body. This body is yours. You're not this mind. This mind of yours, which you currently identify and attach yourself to, that's not you. It is yours. It is yours and it is subject to change. It is changing. It grows, it matures, its feelings and affections and preferences change over a period of time. It's yours, but it's not you. Your thoughts, your ideas, your ideologies, your intellect, it's yours. It is not you. Who are you? We never think about it. But in Vedanta, that is what the rishis have been thinking about. That is the whole subject. That's the whole subject. So in Vedanta, the rishis come and say, that thou art, Tattvamasi, that I, your real nature, that real individual within you, your real self is the Purusha, is the spirit, is the Atman. Try to reconnect to that. That's the whole journey. Right now, we're completely entangled and enmeshed in Prakriti. That's called ego. The extent to which you are attached and entangled in Prakriti. Your Prakriti is your individuality. Your Prakriti is different from my Prakriti, is different from a third person's Prakriti. Your material equipments, the matter aspect of you is completely different. No two people's Prakriti is the same. I'm building up to this chapter. I'm building up to the idea of gunas. No two people's Prakriti is the same. Your body is different from my body. Your mind is different from my mind, albeit there might be some similarities. Similarly, there might be some similarities. The color of your skin may be similar to the color of my skin. Your height may be similar to my height, but it's different. Your mind may have similar preferences to mine, but no two minds are the same. Your thoughts and ideas may be similar to mine, or maybe we may have completely different thoughts and ideas and ideologies and beliefs. No two intellects are the same. You may have a very different thinking capacity. I have a very different thinking capacity and thinking style. So no two bodies, minds, or intellects are the same. Every body, mind, and intellect, every prakriti, every matter, material equipment is completely different. And that's that's the difference between individuals. Your prakriti is your individuality. The purusha, the spirit, the self in all is one and the same. At the level of that I, when you reach that I, there's no distinction, there's no difference. It's only when we start identifying with prakriti do we become different. Do we find distinctions between any two beings? The I in you is the same as the I in me, is the same as the I in anybody else, anything else. The self in you, the purusha in you, is the same as the purusha in me. So your prakriti is different from my prakriti. That's what makes you your individual. That's what makes me my individual. The extent to which you are entangled and enmeshed and attached to your prakriti, that's what is called ego. Attachment to your individuality. What is ego? Ego is attention on your individuality. The extent to which your attention, your attachment, your entanglement is to your own individuality, to that extent you are egoistic. The extent to which you are free from the entanglement, to that extent you're able to acknowledge the existence of others. You're able to zoom out. To that extent you're free from prakriti, your own prakriti. To that extent you're spiritual. So your prakriti is different from my prakriti. And why? What brings about this difference? What distinguishes one prakriti from another prakriti? It is called gunas, qualities. Your gunas, your prakriti has certain gunas, my prakriti has certain gunas, a third person's prakriti has certain gunas. Gunas means qualities. It is the distinction, the difference in the gunas in any two individuals that makes them distinct and different. No two individuals have the same gunas. Your body has different gunas, my body has different gunas, your mind has different gunas. Now, these gunas, these qualities are broadly divided primarily into three parts, three types. Gunas are broadly divided into three types: sattvic or sattva, rajasic, rajas, and tamasic. Sattva, rajas, tamas. Broadly speaking, there are three gunas: sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are the glue of your individuality. These are the very building blocks of your prakriti. Your prakriti is the heterogeneous nature of your prakriti. Heterogeneous means different from others. There are heterogeneous variety of beings because of the gunas. No two beings are the same. So it's different proportions of sattva, rajas, tamas that make any two beings different. The amount of sattva in you, the amount of rajas in you, the amount of tamas in you. Every being, every prakriti is a combination of all three. It's not that somebody is 100% sattvic. In any individual, there is a proportion of sattva, there is a proportion of rajas, and there is a proportion of tamas. I repeat, in any individual, there is a proportion of sattva, a proportion of rajas, and a proportion of tamas. When the proportion of sattva is maximum, majority, 50% sattva, majority over rajas and tamas. Rajas may be 30%, tamas may be 20%. That's when you are called a sattvic person. Predominantly the gunas in you, the qualities in you, the nature, your nature is sattvic. When sattva predominates over rajas and tamas, there's still rajas and tamas in you. Even in the most evolved of individuals, there are traces of rajas and tamas. But sattva predominates, it overpowers. See, I'm going over all of this because this chapter has the authority. You'll find this particular verse, what I'm explaining to you, when sattva predominates over rajas and tamas, a person is called sattvic. Similarly, when rajas predominates over sattva and tamas, when the proportion of rajas is maximum, a person is called rajasic. When tamas predominates, means when tamas, proportion of tamas is maximum compared to sattva and rajas, that's when a person is called tamasic. So when a person is called sattvic, first misconception you have to remove. Sattvic doesn't mean a person has only sattva. No, it means the proportion of sattva is maximum. Now, simply naming someone sattvic doesn't make them sattvic. I've seen in Delhi, in Calcutta, we don't have so many boys named Sattvic. I think I know some 5-10 boys named Sattvic in Delhi. Very common name in North India. People think naming their children Sattvic will make them Sattvic. Doesn't work that way. You can hope and pray. You name a child Sattvic and it will turn out to be Sattvic. So the name doesn't matter. What matters is the qualities. If the nature of a person, if the gunas in a person are predominantly sattvic, there's still rajas and tamas in them. But when the proportion of sattva is majority, then a person deserves to be called sattvic. Then a person is sattvic compared to rajasic or tamasic. Similar with rajasic and tamasic. When rajas predominates, it's called rajasic, and when tamas predominates, it's called tamasic. So what are these three gunas? These three gunas present in every individual are broadly the distinctions, the different kinds of prakriti, the different kinds of vasanas, the different kinds of thoughts. The thoughts you have, the kind of thoughts you have, broadly they can be classified as tamasic, as rajasic, or as sattvic. The states of thought let me begin from tamas and then explain sattva. The states of thought in laziness, in indolence, in heedlessness, in inertia, the attitude of not caring, no interest, disinterest, not even disinterest, of no interest. Intellectual laziness. What is disinterest? It's intellectual laziness. It's mental laziness. You don't even want to make the effort to think. The state of thought in laziness, in inertia. What is inertia? Very interesting. This is why everybody should study science, at least till class 12. And please now don't go and force your children to study science till class 12. I'm very biased. Because if you study science till class 12, you'll know what is the meaning of inertia. Very beautiful concept called inertia. What is inertia? When you study Newton's laws of motion, I'm not discussing philosophy right now, I'm discussing physics. When you study Newton's laws of motion, you'll study the concept of inertia. The law of inertia states, it is taught in class 9 these days. But by the time it settles in you, it will become class 12. By the time it settles in you, someone is saying it is taught in class 9 these days. But by the time it settles into you, it gets into your head. Trigonometry is taught in class 9. But by the time it actually settles in you, it's class 12. Anyway, please, I'm not going to express my bias towards the sciences. So what is inertia? When you study in class 9 and you slowly By the time you understand it is class 12, you'll understand this concept. The law of inertia states a body at rest or in motion. A body at rest or in motion will continue to be in that state. Will continue to be in that state until an external force acts upon it. आप सोच रहे होंगे यार कहाँ फंस गया मैं तो यहाँ वेदांत पढ़ने आया था, मुझे फिजिक्स पढ़ा रहे हैं. A body at rest or in uniform motion continues to be in that state unless an external force acts upon it. I'll explain what in simple term, in simple language. Simple फंडा बताता हूँ. Basically, if you're at rest, मतलब अगर आप कहीं, there's no motion in you, there's no movement in you, there's no momentum in you, you will continue in that state unless someone else pushes you, someone else forces you. Or in uniform motion, you may not be at rest, you may be performing certain action mechanically. You may be performing certain action mechanically, like people take up traditions mechanically without thinking. You will continue to perform the tradition mechanically until someone comes and forces you, pushes you to change it. You'll apply that without thinking. You'll do some action mechanically without any thought. So what is inertia? You will continue in your state either of inaction or of mechanical action. You will continue in your state of inaction or mechanical action until and unless someone else comes and puts some sense into you, unless and until someone else comes and pushes you, nudges you in another direction. That's called laziness. You have no capacity to think and change by yourself. You have no capacity to think for yourself and change by yourself. This is called intellectual laziness. That's tamas. No capacity to think for yourself. Just following the herd. Just following the herd. The nature of procrastinating, the nature of putting things off. It's very important. See, the reason I'm saying this is not for you to go and criticize others, a very tamasic person. You have to identify it in yourself. What are the aspects of you? What are the parts of you that are tamasic? What are the parts of you that are tamasic? If you ask my mother, she will say, this fellow is never on time. This fellow is never on time. Punctuality. A tamasic person can never be punctual. So I know that is the aspect of tamas in me. I have to change it. I have to work upon it. Similarly, you have to identify what is the tamas in you. What is the tamas in you? There are different ways of tamas, different aspects, different ways in which tamas manifests in you. Different kinds of tamas in you. Arrogance is a kind of tamas. What is arrogance? Sticking by your point heedlessly, not caring about the logic another person presents. An arrogant person doesn't even want to listen. He may be wrong. In fact, very often, arrogance manifests when someone knows they are wrong, but don't want to accept it. They know they are wrong, but they don't want to accept it. And they become arrogant. They don't want to even listen to another person. That is tamas. So heedlessness. What is heedlessness? I don't care about the consequences of my action. I don't care about the other person. That I don't care attitude. A lack of awareness of others is tamas. It's like sleep. What happens when you're sleeping? You're unaware of even anything around you. You'll see it everywhere. You'll see tamas everywhere. I'm saying all of this because it's for you to introspect what aspects of your nature are tamasic and make changes to that. Very often I have to travel for work. Of course, now COVID की वजह से बहुत कम हो गया. But when you're traveling, you see it in the airport. all the time. You see it on the roads. People will stop in the middle of the road to get off from their car. If you're in Calcutta, I don't know, I've not seen it in Delhi much. जो buses होती हैं, mini buses या जो भी public transport होती है, the bus drivers will not care what car is behind them, what traffic is behind them. Wherever they feel like they'll stop. They'll stop. Inconvenience to others. Doesn't even care about the inconvenience to others. Heedless. I'm trying to explain what is heedless. I don't care. That thought doesn't even arise in you. What about the others? Wherever they see a passenger, they will stop. They'll dangerously try to, buses are dangerous. So many bikes get into accidents, cars get into accidents because the buses will just change lanes. They'll have road rage. What is road rage? Road rage is a heedless attitude. I don't care about. See, people get into a thrill, especially young people with fancy cars. They'll get into a thrill of driving at high speeds. I'm sure we all know n number of cases where people either have lost their own lives or hurt others. What is heedlessness? I'm trying to explain what is heedlessness. That complete attachment to a particular action which makes you not even think about the consequence of it. I don't even want to think about it. When the desire to do something is so strong, when you're so completely blind in an activity that you are not even aware of the consequences, the impact, the effect on others. That nature of thought, that strong desire-ridden action is tamas, is a tamasic action. So I'm explaining different aspects of tamas. Tamas is the nature of thoughts in inertia, sleep, laziness, indolence, arrogance, heedlessness. All of these qualities of thoughts are classified as tamas. Very important to understand, because only when you understand what is tamas, you'll be able to diagnose it in yourself. Only when you understand the disease will you be able to diagnose it in yourself. Similarly, there is one step better than tamas, slightly better than tamas, is called rajas. The lowest guna, as it were. The lowest guna, as it were, in personal development is called tamas. Slightly better than that is rajas. Rajas, what is rajas? Rajas is the state of thoughts, the quality of thoughts in passion, in desire-ridden excitement, indulgence, involvement, attachment. The state of thoughts in passion, in frenzy, in excitement, in entanglement, involvement. Unlike tamas, it's not lazy. In fact, rajas will be very active. Rajas will be hyperactive. Unlike tamas, which is chalta hai attitude, rajas is the exact opposite. It's a hyperactiveness. It's almost an impatience. Tamas will be absolutely patient. Patient to a point of fault. Not even having any interest, that level of patience. See, which is why people mistake tamas for a very high state of being also. Very often, when they see a person very calm, they'll appreciate it. A lot of tamasic people are very calm. Outwardly appearing calm is not necessarily a good thing. Outwardly appearing calm is not necessarily a good thing. The highest level of disinterest can also express as calm. So, distinct from tamas is rajas, where there is the complete opposite of that. There is hyperactivity, there is worry, there is tension, because there is complete entanglement, complete frenzy. The state of thoughts in frenzy is rajas. It is fueled by desire-riddenness. A desire uncontrolled is what causes rajas. Desire uncontrolled is the birth of rajas. It's like a chicken without a head. We've all experienced it. Like we have all experienced tamas, we have all experienced rajas. Lust, greed, envy, uncontrolled thought. Uncontrolled thought. See, lust, greed, envy don't appear in the first instance. They appear when the floodgates of thought are allowed to flow. When your desire becomes, when your desire grows to a certain size, to a certain potency, to a certain strength, and the desire is fulfilled slightly, then greed arises. Then greed arises. So greed, lust, excitement, agitation. Where there is rajas, there is worry and anxiety. There is complete attachment. What is attachment? Attachment is dependency. Attachment means dependency. When you are dependent, whatever happens to that thing or that being happens to you. When you're dependent on something, whatever happens to that thing happens to you. When you're attached to something, you can be attached to your car. When there's a scratch on the car, there's a scratch in your heart. Worry and anxiety, stress and strain are all manifestations of rajas. Fear, the attachment of rajas leads to fear. What? Of losing what you have, or of not getting what you want. Both ways. Both of these are expressions of rajas. So the state of thoughts in frenzy, in uncontrolled desire, in passion, that's rajas. And it manifests as greed, jealousy, anxiety, fear, worry, stress, strain, hyperactivity. These are the manifestations of rajas, distinct from tamas. So tamas on the one hand is complete laziness. Rajas on the other hand is complete entanglement, complete attachment, complete stress and strain. Higher than tamas, higher than rajas, the highest guna, the balance between both is called sattva. Sattva, the state of thoughts in objectivity, the state of thoughts in maturity, the state of thoughts in balance, the state of thoughts in equanimity. When your thoughts are regulated, moderated, pure, free from selfishness, free from heedlessness, free from attachment. The state of thoughts in maturity, objectivity, purity, that's sattva. Now, what is important to understand is that sattva is an effect. Sattva is an effect. Sattva results from knowledge. Tamas and rajas appear naturally. You don't have to put in any effort. Tamas and rajas happen naturally. There's no effort required to cultivate tamas and rajas. But to cultivate sattva, you require effort. To cultivate sattva, you have to gain knowledge. To cultivate sattva, you have to put in that work. You have to work on yourself, on your personality, to eradicate tamas and rajas. Only then sattva will increase. So sattva is an effect. Tamas and rajas, it almost appears you don't have to put in any work. Which is why you put in all the work and you become sattvic. But if you stop putting the effort, there's always a chance you will fall back to rajas and tamas. Not so easily, but there's always the chance. There's always the chance. That is the cause for the rise and fall of people. Why? Because when the effort stops, it's very difficult to maintain a standard, maintain a certain quality. Quality is always subject to deterioration when effort stops. So to maintain sattva, you require effort. You require that work. It's very, tamas and rajas don't require that effort. They appear without any work. They appear without any problem. So I've explained a bunch of things about sattva, rajas, and tamas. This is what we will see in this chapter. And with that thought, we'll begin maybe the first verse, or at least the first couple of verses from this chapter. We'll chant verse number 5. Starting from this very thought, gunas belong to Prakriti, not to Purusha. Gunas are born of Prakriti. Remember, in the beginning of class, what we were discussing is the Prakriti is distinct and different. Your Prakriti is different from my Prakriti. And what makes Prakriti is distinct and different? What makes Prakriti distinct and different? Gunas. So gunas belong to Prakriti. Gunas belong to Prakriti. And here he brings up an interesting idea. It is gunas that bind Purusha to Prakriti, as it were. It is gunas that bind Purusha to Prakriti, that keep this glue between Purusha and Prakriti. Gunas bind Purusha to Prakriti. Verse number 5 of chapter 14. We'll chant it together. Sattvam rajastam iti guna prakriti sambhavaha nibadnanti mahabaho dehe dehinam avyayam. Sattvam rajastam iti guna prakriti sambhavaha nibadnanti mahabaho dehe dehinam avyayam. हे महाबाहो, सत्व, रजस और तमस, ये प्रकृति से उत्पन्न होने वाले गुण अविनाशी देहधारी को देह में बांधते हैं. Sattva, rajas and tamas, oh Mahabaho, these gunas born of Prakriti, these qualities born of matter, Prakriti, bind the indestructible embodied, bind the indestructible, the imperishable, the unchanging embodied, the Purusha, to the body, to matter. Gunas are the glue that's keeping Purusha bound to Prakriti. That's keeping you bound to your nature. It is these gunas, attachment to your gunas, that are keeping you bound to your Prakriti. So first of all, we've understood Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are born of Prakriti. The Purusha, the self, the spirit, the Atman is Gunatita, is beyond these gunas. Beyond Sattva also. Beyond Sattva also. The goal of spiritual enlightenment, the goal of reaching the Purusha, of realizing the Purusha, of merging with the Purusha, beyond Prakriti, is beyond the gunas. The goal of spiritual evolution is to transcend the gunas, to go beyond the gunas. This is something you must understand. The goal is not to become sattvic. The goal is to become trans-sattvic, to go beyond sattva also. Please keep this at the back of your mind. Please remember this point. The spiritual goal is not to become sattvic, is to go beyond sattva. So then we might say, then why should we become sattvic? Because becoming sattvic is a means to an end. Becoming sattvic helps you on the journey. When you're tamasic predominantly, first of all, remember I said, when I use the word sattvic, what does it mean? It means sattva predominates, your majority sattva. The proportion of sattva in you is higher and higher and higher, the more sattvic you become. So when I use the word sattvic, that's what I mean. When you become more sattvic, it helps you on your journey. When you're tamasic or rajasic, it's very difficult to absorb these thoughts, absorb these ideas, absorb these values. The more sattvic you become, the more you'll be able to devote yourself to these thoughts, the better your manana, your reflection will be, the better your spiritual practice will be. A tamasic or rajasic person, it's limited how much all of this knowledge will make sense to them, how much they will even be able to apply it in their lives. I want to bring your attention back to chapter 3. There's a very beautiful set of verses which we will start discussing tomorrow, which I will touch upon tomorrow before continuing this. If you recall, we did cover it in the gems also. They were talking about the veil of the gunas, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Tamasic desires, tamasic thoughts are in ignorance. Rajasic thoughts are in ignorance. Sattvic thoughts are in ignorance. But the nature of tamasic thoughts, tamas blocks your enlightenment, blocks your spiritual growth. And what is that? What is that block? The nature of the block is like a womb covering the fetus. Tamas blocks your spiritual growth. Tamas blocks your spiritual enlightenment like a womb blocks the fetus. Womb covers the fetus. What is the nature of that? A womb completely covers the fetus. And no amount of effort, you just have to wait it out. You have to wait it out. The process is painful. You have to wait 9 months. Only then the fetus will emerge. The baby will emerge. So that covering of tamas, it's almost like you have to put in a lot of effort. You have to go through a lot of pain and also wait a lot of time. Change is very slow in tamas. The covering of rajas is like smoke covering a mirror. Dust covering a mirror. The covering of rajas is like dust covering a mirror. When dust covers a mirror, you're unable to see the image. You're unable to see with clearly. And to remove the dust, you require some effort. But with effort, that dust gets removed. And sattva, the covering of sattva is like smoke covering a fire. When there is a fire, there is smoke. And that smoke blocks your vision. But it's almost effortless. You don't even have to put in the effort. If there's a wind, the wind itself will blow away the smoke. You will not even have to put in any effort. So even though sattva, rajas, tamas, they all belong to prakriti and they all stand in the way of your ultimate spiritual enlightenment. Tamas, the block of tamas is very strong, very grave, very deep. Rajas with effort can be transformed. Sattva is like no block. Sattva is in fact closest to that ultimate state of growth. So we will take up this thought. We'll start with this thought tomorrow and we'll continue our discussion on the 3 gunas, because it's a very deep and a very practical topic, the 3 gunas. This chapter is dedicated to discussing the distinction between them and the various aspects of the 3 gunas. So that's what we will continue with tomorrow in our class. With that thought, we'll conclude today's session and we'll see you tomorrow, same time at 7 a.m. on Zoom. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.